Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily. I am Kayla Megwa.
It's the 6th day in the month of February 2025. Good morning and welcome. I'm Ayo Makinde, and hey, this morning, Kayla, I'm retaining you in the southwest of Nigeria. And we're going specifically to Ogun State.
Go ahead. I hear you're taking us to Ogun State today.
Oh, yes, we're taking you to Ogun State. Remember the last time?
Sounds of Ogun.
Absolutely, that's the term, the sights and sounds of Ogun State. Well, this is you getting into, Ogun State, as finding your way somewhere from the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. And this is a different place altogether. Different parts of the city, the Ogun State in itself. And the long shots of Olumorok and the you thought you'd seen all the brown roofs you see in Ibadan. Well, there is more here. And so for those of you living in Ogun State, do me a favor. How many of these places can you name? How many of them can you identify as, okay, I know this place in Ogun State, I know that place in Ogun State, particularly for those of you who live outside of Ogun State. Oh, by the way, this is the June 12 Cultural Center, renamed after the June 12 saga of 1993. And of course, you can see that beautiful long view. And this is one of the things you see right there in the front of the June 12 Cultural Center. And you can stand here and you can see Olumorok right far away. So yes, more brown roofs for you, Kayla.
This contractor, when we catch when we catch this contractor. No, but you see, like I said when we were looking at Ibadan, we should just embrace it. It's just the reality.
I mean,
it's beginning to look beautiful. It doesn't even look rusty anymore.
Oh no, it's not rusty at all. It's not rusty at all. Ogun State just has its own thing, just has its own identity. There are those who say that Ogun State is Lagos Annex. Well, people from Ogun State are going to disagree with that one, and there is no doubt that Ogun State has its own good sides, its own peculiarities. When you hear Gary, then it's likely that you hear Ijebu first, Gary Ijebu. When you hear,
the best Gary in the whole world is Ijebu.
Exactly.
The best Gary in the whole world.
And then those patterned dresses that we have, the tie and dye. Ogun State is what you call it the capital of that one as well. It's just a beautiful, highly industrious state. For those who don't know, you think it's just one of those behind-the-scenes states. No, Ogun State is actually quite industrial and has a lot of land. And it is, for those who want to remain in Lagos but can't afford Lagos, Ogun State is just the best neighborhood to be.
I mean, that's not even nice, Ayo. This place, you cannot be using it as an alternative. You can't afford Lagos.
But
so you
that's what some people say. That's what some people say. It's a lot quieter than Lagos.
Stop saying it. It does look like a very historic city.
It is.
And
actually.
A lot of books, a lot of the books and the literature that we had to read growing up kept talking about Ogun State and some of these sites that we're looking at right now. I think looking at it from above, it does look like it is well coordinated. It looks like a well-kept city. And it feels like the history of the place has been preserved. It's easy to get the history of Ogun State. It's easy to get the stories, all of the folklore around this place, I think it's a very well-preserved culture. And, Nollywood does a fantastic job. Putting all those stories out there. It's a wonderful thing. I can't wait to start seeing, the stories of these states and the magical things that have happened.
Well, there are some out there,
in many states of this country, to see them on the screen, with Ogun State, with Oyo, with Osun.
There are some out there, Kayla.
I want to be able to see it in Ekiti. I said Ekiti. I would like to see it in the southeast as well.
Well, there are some. Let me tell you
about the southeast and the north and other parts.
There are some of Ogun State. There is a movie on Netflix now titled Lishabi. It's a story from
yes,
that from Ogun State. If you have seen Funmilayo Ransome Kuti, it is also excuse me, a movie from Ogun State, and quite a number of others that I have seen. Shorts about telling the stories, historic stories. Don't forget that Ransome Kuti was one of the foremost political icons in the country, and the representation and the lessons that her life and times have originated, we can't remonstrate it. The late Fela Ransome Kuti, and of course that all of that family came from that woman, and you can just imagine the kind of impact that their lives have been over time. So yes, there is a lot of history attached to Ogun State, southwest Nigeria.
Fantastic. Well, let's take it all in. Good morning, Ogun State, and everyone who's from Ogun State. You're a pride to your nation. There's a lot of history around you, and we cannot tell the story of Nigeria without touching Ogun State multiple times. Thank you so much for that view from Ogun State. Well, let's get to the show proper this morning. If you close your eyes too long in Nigeria, 3/4 of the things would happen, and you would have no idea what's happened by the time you get up. Yesterday was full of surprises. The president left the country. We have that. The Zamfara school, the elementary school fire was also something that happened yesterday as well, and that worried a lot of us. We also got an update from Ebonyi State. A suspect has been nabbed in the Ebonyi attack as well. And then, of course, everyone is talking about Lagos State Assembly and the Obasa conundrum, what is really going on there. The FEC meeting that lasted for 2 days, the outcomes are here, and we're going to be kicking off our conversation with that. And then one of the biggest stories, Ude Okoye affirmed as National Secretary of the People's Democratic Party. We'll be talking about that in just a bit. That and so much more. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Members of the Federal Executive Council arriving for the second day of the council meeting. The meeting proceeds into a closed session, and after several hours, some ministers appear to brief on the decisions taken. One is the approval given to the Debt Management Office to raise 758 billion naira for the payment of the backlog of pension and gratuities.
To give people their right, which is payment of their pension liabilities as and when due, the government has put in place an approval for Debt Management Office to raise 758 billion naira that will pay down all these liabilities and, of course, be a tremendous relief to the beneficiaries.
He also announced the approval for the implementation of a national single window project.
This project not only speaks to improving the economic competitiveness, the international ability to export efficiently and of the Nigerian economy, but it also speaks to increasing government revenue.
In a bid to forestall a repeat of the flood disaster that occurred in Maiduguri last year, approval was given for the reconstruction and expansion of the Laolu Dam in Borno State.
At the tune of 80 billion. The Borno State government is working with the subcommittee and members of the Nigerian Security Advisory Office that are working together to kickstart that project. And we are believing that between now and July this year, the first component of that work will be established so that this year there will be no flooding in Maiduguri again.
The Federal Executive Council also approved 6 contracts for major diagnostic equipment in various teaching hospitals, signaling a rebuild of health infrastructure. in addition to other approvals for the Ministry of Works and the Federal Capital Territory. In total, Council considered 101 memos over the 2 days of meetings.
Between yesterday and today, approvals given, for example, to the Ministry of the FCT, to the Ministry of Works, to Health, a lot of construction jobs being approved by the Federal Executive Council. Now, this is not just an attempt to create the enabling infrastructure that we need for development of the country, but also reflect the economy by ensuring that, because the quickest way of ensuring that the entire country is being rejuvenated again and then the economy is being put back to life.
The minister says the administration is mindful that Nigerians are going through a lot of challenges, but that it is working hard to ensure that the economy is stable and that the country turns the corner. From the presidential villa, Lanre Lasisi, Channels Television News.
That's a lot of memos, 101 memos in 2 days, and a lot of construction work being signed off on by the Federal Executive Council. But let's take a look at some of the other issues around the President's Council. And joining us to have this conversation is someone who has been very, very up to date on everything that's been going on. Professor Anthony Chibo is an African development activist and author, professor of international business economics, a researcher at the Swiss Business School in Zurich in Switzerland. He's also a data engineer and a scientist. He's joining us via Zoom. Thank you so much for being with us, Prof.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah.
All right, so let's break down the Federal Executive Council meeting for the past 2 days. 101 memos examined and a lot of construction. And one of the ones that stood out for many people was the one that would stop flooding coming back to Borno State. Remember that devastating flood of last year that got all of us very upset. And then, of course, all this construction work. What are your thoughts on the outcome of this very important meeting?
Good. Positive. It's always good to have decisions that are in the right direction. But decisions are one thing and implementation is another. Where we've always had a problem is in the implementation. So what next? What's going to happen now? I wish there was more said about how the implementation was going to work out now, going forward. So floods are not going to take place, but that's going to take a lot of mobilization of funds, a lot of mobilization of equipment on ground now. So honestly speaking, as a Nigerian, my worry is in the implementation of what they have decided on. And I want to keep it simple like that. How, if the information minister can come and tell us, or the infrastructure minister can tell us, how exactly is it that the floods are going to be kept from flooding Maiduguri? How? That's the question. And I do not want to infringe on this point by saying anything more. How?
Well, enough has been said and the point has been noted. I want to be able to get your thoughts on other national issues. One of the things that we've been talking about for the past few days, even though the U.S. president has decided that Nigeria will not be suffering what we thought we were going to be suffering with the withdrawal of funds, especially when it comes to HIV treatment in the country. But let's talk a little bit about tariffs and how they affect the Nigerian people. Are we positioned to handle, let's say all the funding goes. He is pulled out of the World Health Organization. I'm talking about the American President, Donald Trump, pulled out of the World Health Organization, pulled out of a lot of these things that used to, and the funding from his country used to be what used to help us in Nigeria in many areas. Let's say all of it goes away. Are we positioned to handle these situations? And what should we be thinking about as a government?
Okay, I'm going to take you up on the last part of your question. What should we be thinking about as a government? Important. Nice, very good question. You see, talking about taxes and tariffs alone is misleading, okay? Nigeria currently is like a boat that is sailing in the wrong direction. This direction that we're going right now will never lead us to economic prosperity. So So please permit me, I'm one of those people that feel very bad talking about taxes, tariffs, GDP, when the total direction of the country is not really where we should be going. If in any country, including Nigeria, especially Nigeria, if the direction you're going is not an aggressive, I repeat, an aggressive push for industrialization and manufacturing, everything you're talking about, including tariffs and taxes, is like it's not important at the moment, because it gives the impression that if we get taxes right, that we are going to develop. That's wrong. We are not going to develop if we do not start manufacturing. It gives the impression as if tariffs right now are appropriate, it gives that impression that, oh, if we can get tariffs right in the right places, that we will develop. No, we won't. But we won't develop. The reason is because we are not manufacturing. All energy, just like I've just taken your question now and funneled it towards understanding that we must manufacture, we must industrialize. That is how all energy should be towards industrialization and manufacturing. Aggressively, every morning. All we're supposed to be thinking about is, how do we manufacture what we consume on a daily basis? That's what we should be thinking about right now. You see, Nigeria's economy is in a dangerous crossroads today. We are facing severe structural policy weaknesses, and they didn't start today. They started they've been around for decades. And everything, I know we can talk about the GDP and taxes and tariffs, and we will. But let me make this point right now, that the situation we're in Nigeria will never develop. Any problems you think we have today, our currency, our inflation, it will never go away until an implementation of cancelling everything we import, or almost everything we import, and making that aggressive effort of manufacturing them here. If we don't do that, we are going to be talking about this in the next 10 years. So I just want to start by making that point. When you are now manufacturing and you're exporting and you're consuming what you manufacture, then you can now start positioning where your tariffs go and what taxes go, and then where taxes go. And then your tariffs and your taxes will now be positioned and implemented in such a way that once again, they encourage manufacturing. Production. And this is very, very, very important. A big problem now, you see, is that our economy is dependent on crude oil exports. Oh, yeah. We all know that. But guess what? This crude oil accounts for only 7% of our GDP. So the bigger problem now is that 90% crude oil accounts for 7% of our GDP, but 90% of our foreign exchange earnings. That's can you see an askew and misaligned economy that we have? So that means that oil, when you talk about suffering in Nigeria, it's because oil does not create widespread prosperity in Nigeria. The economy operates on an import-heavy, consumption-driven model. And that is why this morning I'm attacking importation and I am elevating production and manufacturing. If we don't, throughout the decades, I think, apart from maybe the General Murtala administration, throughout the decades, so this is not about politics and the present administration or the past, throughout the decades, we have not put emphasis, at least since the 70s, 1976 to be exact, between 74 and 76, we have not put an emphasis in import substitution manufacturing. And that is why we are today. Now, most of economic indices, most, if not all economic indices that we are copying, okay, to raise our GDP, to tax the informal economy, and those things only work when you have a manufacturing, industrialized based economy. We don't. So the most important thing right now is to get into and to become an industrialized and manufacturing economy. Then the figures that we talk about, inflation 29%, 36% and all the rest, those figures will begin to make sense. Because right now, we do not have to, we have, inflation is about 100%. Food inflation could be more. So all the economics I can talk here, the Nigerians, don't make sense. They won't make sense, and it will be very, very frustrating to be talking about them if the point is not made that we should start manufacturing. When we wake up in the morning, after prayers, we should be thinking about, I'm talking of government and people, how do we, my phone, your clothes, your pen, everything that we use for day to day, our cars, the day you wake up and all there is a policy and it's implemented, that all vehicles, all official vehicles must be manufactured or from a company that manufactures them here, they were in the right direction. I just use that as an example.
Prof, I want you to get your thoughts on the request by the president. He's written to the National Assembly. He's saying they should raise the budget to 54.2 trillion naira, and he's owing that to inflows, he says, from customs, from the FIRS, and you know the lawmakers most likely will do this. I want to be able to get your thoughts on this increment and the budget in itself. One of the questions that we had in the beginning of this budget submission was, is this a people-friendly budget? And is this the budget, like you said, that will move us from a consumer nation to a manufacturing nation, to a nation that exports what they manufacture? Talk to us, but they do have a lot of hopes, reducing inflation to 15%. They say they want to do, the federal government says they want to do this year. Now, with this increment, just to get your thoughts on that increment and the plans for the budget for 2025, is this going to be the one?
My sister, I do not want to sound like a broken record. Taxation in Nigeria, all plans of raising revenue in the budget is all focused on extraction and not production. Can I say that again? All plans of raising revenue in the budget, while I praise the efforts, people must have worked hard on it, and there's a lot of good things in it. But again, you can understand from what I said before why what is the most important thing for us right now is production. And how the revenue I see there, especially on taxation and all it is, they're all extractive. None is focused on production. Again, another thing again. Encouraging production and manufacturing, I don't see it there in the sectors that will create jobs. I don't. That's my opinion. And it's not it's nothing personal. It is pure economics. The government is aggressively taxing the formal sector. Good. It now has plans to tax the informal sector, but there are no incentives that I see anywhere for somebody that wants to start up a small-scale industry that replaces imported goods right now. Hello. Let me say that again, because this is a defining thing I want to say. I do not see any incentives anywhere for a small-scale industry, also large, if you may, but small-scale industry entrepreneurs, no incentives in any of the tariffs, any of the taxes, of any of the policies that will encourage small-scale industry now to begin to manufacture batteries, to begin to manufacture in Nigeria using Nigerian raw materials, tires.
I mean, Prof, I hate to cut you in there, but, you know, just staying on that point so that we don't lose our train of thought, you know, when it comes to what it is that we are planning to do as a country. And I know my colleague in Lagos, Ayo, would have a few questions for you in this regard, especially when we're looking at the fact that the Trump has pulled out of USAID and how all of that is going to impact us and our readiness as a country, Ayo, to handle these situations. Over to you.
Yeah, well, it's a really touching one, and I'm pretty sure that, Prof, you know, you've been on this and you've been at this for a while. There's that book that a number of people have seen around, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa, and the challenge then is how Africa can industrialize itself. Now, everybody knows that Africa is the next beacon, and Nigeria is certainly at the heart of it. Now, I'm looking at a list in front of me now, and when you say that we cannot really make any progress until we industrialize as a nation. Now, could it be lost on us? In case it is lost on us, the things that we need to do to industrialize. Can you give us a list, Prof? What are the things that we must do? What are the things we must strengthen? What are the soft infrastructure that we have to have? We know that power is a major infrastructure, hard infrastructure that we have to have, but what are the soft infrastructure that are expedient for us to have in order to industrialize significantly?
Yeah, thank you for that question, because most people think it's really quite difficult to industrialize, and the word industrialization, it seems to be very big, and people think of big factories with smoke and chimneys coming up. No, the first thing that we need to do is not even physical. But the first thing, and most people don't hear this, the first thing you need to think is the willingness to copy. Yeah, you heard me right. The willingness to copy, to be able to forge what is in front of you and what you're using. That's the first thing you need to do. To encourage small pockets of copiers. So if it is slippers, if it is shoes, if it is batteries, you need to get small pockets of what we call basic manufacturers, very basic, but ready to split apart anything that's imported and copy it. That's the first thing, the willingness and the encouragement from government for people that are willing to do this. So that's number one in the list. Number two in the list is what I would call to eliminate. It's still not physical. Eliminate this thing that I point to be post-colonial dependency syndrome, which is do not adhere to any of the present world system encouragements, especially of the trade organizations, because you see what you will be manufacturing if you copy, you're willing to copy, is exactly what your competitors or your former colonial masters or the people in Asia are going to manufacture. And so they're going to come against you one way or the other to tell you that you are either contravening on one World Trade Organization treaty or the other. You must close your ears to that as you begin to make your own toothpaste locally from local materials. So those two things first. Then you already mentioned power. Even though you've mentioned before, it must be mentioned, because if you do not have cheap power, you're not going anywhere. But a way to get over that is to have what we call localized power. So I do not see why Ogun State or Enugu State should not by now, or any other state, power should be decentralized. That's the point I'm trying to make. That would be number three. Decentralized power production and put power production in what we call manufacturing zones. So every state should have a manufacturing zone or multiple manufacturing zone. In those manufacturing zones, power should never cease. So power plants there, however they're going to be powered, whether it's through renewable energy or even diesel, power never ceases. So if you move into such a manufacturing zone, you don't need to talk or worry about power. That would be number 4 in my list. Now, once power is established, then go back to number 1. Begin to set up factories that copy exactly what it is that you're importing.
It sounds like me. Yeah, Prof, my apologies. I mean, going back to that same point, you know, it is a good one. But it seems like maybe some people, federal and state governments, ought to invite you for some kind of consultancy. But just a quick one before we end this conversation, Prof. Young people. A lot of things that we see around, they are things, they would look like it's not rocket science, but it seems like it's a lot. The disenchantment is quite high. In 30 seconds, what would you recommend for young people to focus on? Because it would seem like generally young people are very disenchanted and very unhappy with the establishment, so to speak. What would be your recommendation, seeing what they are doing in the entertainment sector and in fintechs? What would be your recommendation to young people? What should they focus on? If you can do that in 30 seconds.
Well, there's a 4th industrial revolution that we have. The 4th industrial revolution is marked by technologies we've all heard about. Most you've heard, like, which is artificial intelligence, data engineering, that's the data science, biotechnology, and nanotechnology, which is more complicated. But the young people now, with a quick advice I will be with, focus on AI. Focus on mastering AI and producing applications that solve day-to-day needs in your country, and guess what? The same needs that in your country are also global. That's the quick way out. You gave me 10 seconds. There are many ways that we could do this. But if you're not giving me so much time, I would say go on AI, study AI, and produce applications using AI, solve problems, real problems.
Even that,
you become self-employed.
Yeah. Even that in itself is a lot on its own. I mean, everything is going on AI live. Absolutely everything is going. But we just have to thank you for now. I'm pretty sure that is the beginning of conversations about this, because industrializing Africa, to adopt the term used in the 70s after the Civil War, industrializing Africa is a task that must be done. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Professor Anthony Chibo is an African development activist, author, professor of international business economics, and he's also a researcher at Swiss Business School, Zurich, Switzerland. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you.
Yeah. So when we return, let's talk politics after now.
Welcome back. We're switching gears to politics, but before we get to that, of course, we have a few updates. Of course, you know the President Tinubu is not in the country, departing Abuja for Paris, France, for a private visit. And then after that private visit, he'll be on his way to Addis Ababa, that's the Ethiopian capital. And I'm looking at the reports here. He'll be joining African leaders at the 46th Ordinary Session of the Executive Council and the 38th Ordinary Session of the Assembly of the AU Heads of State, scheduled from February the 12th to February the 16th. So we'll be giving you the updates on that. Now, as we started the show today, we said if you close your eyes for too long in Nigeria, everything will happen and you will not know what has happened. You will not know what country you're in. Then you open up your eyes. And why are we saying that? Well, the PDP, we had been watching that impasse in the PDP, especially with the office of the National Secretary. And for many people in that party, the office of the acting chairman of the party is also one in contention. But we'll get to that later. The Board of Trustees of the People's Democratic Party has affirmed the appointment of Ude Okoye. Mr. Ude Okoye, yes, the man you saw, bald-faced and barefooted, running out of that meeting in Wadata House. he has been affirmed as the National Secretary of the People's Democratic Party. The way to progress in the PDP will be our focus this morning. That Board of Trustees also met yesterday I think at the Hilton they met yesterday and made that decision. Now, there is one man who has been saying that this was going to be the outcome. No matter what happened, no matter what letters they submit, no matter what meetings happen, he has always said that Ude Okoye will be the National Secretary of the People's Democratic Party. And joining us is that same man, Mr. Kola Olobodinyo, former spokesperson of the People's Democratic Party. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you very much, Kayla. Good morning, and good morning, Nigeria.
I said I was going to write down a few things that you can help me to prophesy on. Because
Am I a prophet?
It looks a little, it's beginning to look like this prophecy ministry of yours. It looks like it's yielding results. But let's talk about the meat of the matter. Is this Uhuru, or are there more contentious issues for the People's Democratic Party? And then, of course, the process that led to Ude Okoye being recognized by the governors and the Board of Trustees as the National Secretary of the People's Democratic Party.
Thank you very much, Kayla. But before I proceed, let me quickly sympathize with the people of Zamfara State, particularly the governor of the state, Mr. Laolu, on the death of 17 pupils of Islamia school due to an inferno that occurred in their school. It's a pity, and I also sympathize with the parents and guardians of those pupils. But having said that, let's go back to our party. Well, it is clear to the eye and to everybody who is interested in the activities of the PDP that going by the trajectory of the court matters in respect of the position of the National Secretary, Ude Okoye was definitely going to be recognized by the party. And let me give you a background to this. There was a decision by Senator Samayahu to vie for the governorship of Imo State. He went and contested, and before he came back, the Southeast geopolitical zone of the People's Democratic Party, through its leadership, came together and said, oh, our National Secretary has gone to contest election, so let us find a replacement. And they collectively nominated Honorable SKE Ude Okoye. And having done that, he submitted his nomination. But there were issues in the party because it was turned down. He went to court, to the Federal High Court in Enugu. Senator Samayahu went to the Federal High Court in Abuja. These are two courts of same jurisdiction, according to lawyers. And the judgment, in line with what happened in Nigeria today, Samayahu got one judgment. Ude Okoye got his own judgment too. So the next place to go to is the Court of Appeal. So Senator Ayahu, who went to Court of Appeal, it was not Ude Okoye. So when Senator Ayahu went to the Court of Appeal, Ude Okoye engaged with him, not through himself, but through a member of the party who is concerned. Engaged with Ayahu. And the judgment in the Court of Appeal said that from the day that Senator Ayahu left to contest for governorship, he has ceased to be the National Secretary. And as such, declare Ude Okoye as National Secretary. We're unsatisfied. Senator Ayahu proceeded for a stay of execution before the Court of Appeal. Somehow, the President of the Court of Appeal moved the matter from Enugu to Abuja and presided over the matter. And in her decision, the President of the Court of Appeal ruled that you are looking for a stay of execution, but I will grant you status quo ante bellum, pending when I give judgment on 27th of January. 27th of January has passed. Judgment on stay of execution has not been given. Because if you look at the order, although they abandoned two orders, but the order that came out of the court, it's clearly stated that she will give judgment, that the President of the will give judgment on January 27 on stay of execution. You understand? But in the interim, before that judgment, let there be status. Today is February 6th. No judgment has been given. If you speak to lawyers, and I've spoken to a couple of lawyers, particularly the senior advocates, they will tell you that in the inflection of time, that order of status quo has ceased to exist.
Is that how that really works?
Yes. So it has in the inflection of time because the court said that.
That's the argument.
Yes, the court says that.
If you're supposed to maintain status quo antebellum,
yes,
that means that things should really, somehow should stay in that office.
Pending judgment.
That if the judgment hasn't been given, why has he been removed?
So judgment hasn't been given, and today is June. Today is already June. Today is February 6th. And as we are speaking, the judgment has been given.
So does the order now cease to exist?
According to lawyers, the order has ceased to exist.
They will fight you on this one.
In the inflection of time.
They will not agree with you.
Having said that, the party at the last BOT before this one meeting decided that, look, Honorable Tani Moturaki, former Minister of Special Duties, who has always risen for the party in times of legal conflict, that both Ayahu and Udeokoye to submit their judgments.
Okay, so upon the examining of those judgments.
So that he can examine those judgments and advise
the BOT.
And let me tell you, Kila, this will not be the first time that Tani Moturaki, SAN, is carrying out that kind of activity. All
right, let's talk a little bit about some of the issues here. I think it was Mr. Laolu Olayinka, Minister Wike's spokesperson. I heard him talking recently on Channels TV and right here in our station, and he was talking a little about what we're getting from the courts and a lacuna. At least inferred, really, from what he said. He didn't say directly, but inferred from what he said. When it comes to the office of the National Secretary, it is the party that is supposed to sort that out, not the court's judgment, and that particular area, where you leave your office as National Secretary to go and contest for election, it's not really clear on what should happen there, or it does seem like when it comes to the party, you can go and you can come back, and it is only the NWC or the NEC or the BOT that can actually decide who the national secretary of the party is going to be, not a court judgment. And that the fact that the man vacated, he didn't vacate, he took an excuse to go and run for, that's Mr. Samanyawo, took an excuse to go run for governor. Doesn't mean that his seat was now vacant. He finished and he came back. And this is an internal party matter.
Kila, the challenge in the PDP today, largely, is due to the fact that we pick and choose the laws that we want to obey. Okay, if I even go by the argument of Mr. Leary, that is the party that should decide it. Okay, the BOT has taken a decision. The Governors Forum, the most influential pressure group in the party, the most influential, and I say this with every sense of responsibility, the most influential group in the party is the Governors Forum. They have said they have taken a decision, which aligns with the position of the BOT. You have not called NEC. If you call NEC today, I can assure you here that the NEC will go the same way. You understand? So if you say that, oh, we shouldn't have left it, it shouldn't have been the decision of the court. Party should have decided it. But the party organs are deciding now, and you are not ready to abide. That is one side. Kila, also don't forget that Ambassador Ilyasu Umar Damagun, the acting national chairman, who is sitting on the right of the North Central people, is sitting by virtue of the protection that he got from the court, not by the party. So why are you not going to say that, oh, in one case, as it affects Damagun, we should obey the court. In another case, as it affects Udeokoye, we should not go by the court. But the bottom line of all this, and the success of it, is the fact that even the party organs are also speaking in line with the decision of the court. I know PDP because I have covered PDP as a reporter. I know the party that is a law-obeying political party. It will not abandon a decision of the court when it comes to self-help. So
does that mean, and I want to be able to get Ayo in on this, does that now mean that whenever someone who's occupying a position in the People's Democratic Party decides to run for office, that is the office for any political office, that office that he's occupying in the PDP, does that mean that it is now vacant? I think that's one of the... Does that mean that he's... So everyone who's holding any office right now in the People's Democratic Party, does that mean that if he wants to run for any office, that office he was holding in the PDP is now vacant? Is that what it means?
I've sat in the NWC and I've seen that happen over and over. The members of working committee want to go and contest election.
Yes.
They resign.
All right, let's get Ayo to weigh in on this conversation. Ayo, go ahead.
Well, one of the issues that I would want to raise with you is the people, the members of the party. This is not the time, I mean, you would agree with me that we're having this kind of issues, particularly about the People's Democratic Party, issues that have been raised over time, how do you call it now? Family matters, combustible issues treated as family affairs, and all of that. It's, for me, one of the major challenges that come as a result of this is the trust that is dwindling. I mean, PDP is about the most, if not, well, one of the most, if not the most prominent and the most consistent of all political parties since 1999, since this Fourth Republic began. But it will seem like almost 10 years now, the PDP has been its own attacker, its own enemy, its own foe over the past 10 years or thereabout. And it will seem like this consistency, has sustained itself one way or the other with the infighting on a sustainable level. Now, I know you're going to say something like, all parties have these kind of issues, but all parties are also not PDP. Don't you think it's impeding on the trust that the members of the party have on it, not being able to deal with these issues, as quickly as possible?
Thank you very much, Ayo, and good morning and Happy New Year to you, Ayo. I've listened to you, and I accept that there are challenges within the party. And it's just because a political party is a mix. You find the clean, you find the dirty, and you find all sorts. But you must pull together, because that is why it is called a political party. It is a mix. So the unfortunate situation is that the rule that guides the party provides that nobody should go to court, that whatever the party decides should be acceptable. But you find people who will go under the issue of, my rights, my constitutional rights, my freedom, and all that. And they want to take the party to court. It's happening over a period of time. But if the court now decides, and that's why I have challenge, if the court now decides in one way or the other, I believe that you first accept the decision of the court. Then if you have the opportunity to still go to court for superior standing, you should also proceed to that. In the current matter, if Senator Ayahu is displeased with the judgment of the Court of Appeal in Enugu and has applied for stay of execution, and the way things look, and from the examination of the party through the former minister, Kabiru Moturaki, and it appears that they come out with a decision that you do not have a stay, all well and good, you are in the Supreme Court, obey this court first, which is the court of second instance in this matter. You have lost and won one in the Federal High Court. You went to appeal, you have lost it. You are asking for a stay. It has not been granted. So proceed to the Supreme Court, but in the interim, allow the party to function. I think this is what normal and civil society will do. But unfortunately, it's not going that way, but the party is struggling within itself to rescue herself and make sure that it delivers on its own responsibility.
But Mr. Logan, one of the issues that also rises here is, Kayla already called you a prophet, so maybe we can just hold on to that for a bit. But did you see this coming? And also, are there other likely combustible issues that the party needs to deal with? Otherwise, it blows up to what we have now or even worse.
We saw it coming. And anybody in the People's Democratic Party who is interested in the life of the party cannot claim not to know that this is this will happen. But having said that, I still insist, and I believe I speak for majority of the people of the North Central, that even if it is going to be for a day, the North Central must be allowed to take over the office of the substantive national chairman, which was vacated by Senator Iyorchia Ayu, through which Ambassador Elias Damagum assumed office in acting capacity, which means it's not substantive. So we need, whether the life of this executive will end in December or it will end before then, the North Central should be given the opportunity. Otherwise, the challenge that led to G5 is still alive. It will not function in the same way, but it will be on record that the party at a point was unjust to the people of the North Central.
So, I like to look at issues etymologically. I like to look at the roots of the issues. Now, you said something the other time that the normal thing, the sensible thing to do is to follow the rules, follow the laws, and follow the processes and all of that. I believe, as you have said, that the People's Democratic Party is one based on rule of law. And there are systems in place that, as you often say from time to time, that the party has internal mechanisms to deal with these issues. I assume that one of the instruments of those mechanisms is the constitution of the party. Do you think there is allegiance by members of the party to that constitution? Because I'm wondering if the constitution is existent and there are laid down procedures, whether written or unwritten, the issues you are raising here now and the fears you are surreptitiously expressing would be invalid.
Thank you very much. The constitution of the party is very clear. But because of interests, people set out to manipulate that same constitution. For instance, Section 47(6) of the PDP Constitution, as amended in 2017, is very clear on the issue of succession in the executive office of the party. And in fact, sometimes people refer to another section, but that section closes by saying that without hurting the provision of 47(6), is a paraphrase for me. Section 47(6) says that where vacancy occurs in a zone or area, it didn't say in a region. In a zone or area, the executive at that level will take a replacement. It didn't say we'll go to convention. More so, the neck of the party has the powers constitutionally to act on behalf of the convention. So all the issues, all the challenges that we are facing in the PDP today, the provisions of the constitution of the party, as amended in the 2017, is very clear, is unambiguous. It can suit whatever the situation that we find ourselves. And in the case of the National Secretary, people are saying that, oh, there's no provision in the constitution. Okay, there's no provision in the constitution, but somebody went to court, and court has ruled in a particular manner, in a particular way. Like I said earlier, if you are dissatisfied, obey the decision of the court first and proceed to the next level of superiority of the court system. I think that's what should be done. But as we speak today, in matter of the National Secretary, it is clear the Governor's Forum has spoken, and they said that having examined the judgments, Udo Okoye is the recognized National Secretary. The Board of Trustees has come up and said, having examined the judgments of the court, Udo Okoye is the National Secretary. And they have also called on the Board of Trustees has called on the working committee to proceed by affirming Udo Okoye as the National Secretary. So the party is waiting for the National Working Committee to do the needful. I want to put it this way.
Well, in the meantime, what would you propose to the members of the party Because there are those, there is the assumption that some people believe that they own the party because they donate, they provide a lot of its resources, and the members don't seem to be able to do much. It would seem like bad precedents have been laid, and the members who are coming behind to take over the quote-unquote reins of power in the party are likely to sustain this. How does the party come back from this?
Honestly, Ayo, if we look at the party system in our country today, there is a quick need to go back to the Second Republic system in which parties are self-funding. Until we revert to that situation, and this is not limited to the People's Democratic Party, it's across all parties. Until we revert back to the situation in which members of the political party fund their parties, we will continue to have situations like this. And it's not going to augur well for our democracy. So for me, I would recommend that parties should be self-funded. Thank you.
Interesting. Well, Kayla, you have to take over from here, but just to quickly inform the viewer that the coronation and presentation of staff of office to the monarch, His Royal Majesty Gubo Johnson Dio Matalo, is going on, and we will be joining that event in a moment today at the 6th of February 2025. This is for all of our audience on the DSTV platform alone. Kayla.
And of course, our conversations will continue, but as we wrap up, NEC is next.
Yeah, NEC is it's March 13. And the decision to arrive at that was taken with the chairman of the acting chairman of the party and the governors forum. That March 13. So that all activities preceding NEC, including the 21-day notice, will be issued. And I think that for us to safeguard this party, for us to bring life back to the party, we need a quick way of reconciling all these issues and putting these issues behind us.
I want to thank you very much for making out the time to be with us, and good luck with the PDP.
Thank you, Kayla.
We'll be watching, hopefully everything is sorted out and we can have a viable opposition to the APC.
We hope so.
All right, Business Morning on Sunrise Daily is up next. Please stay with us.
Hello and welcome to the Trading Day right here, and we are coming to you live from our NGX studio. So definitely where I am right now, I can smell the money as the transactions are happening just in front of me there. But let's bring you the top stories that set your agenda now. Let's get a check on what's happening with oil prices. Now we're seeing oil prices ticked up in early Asian trade today, steadying from the sell-offs, from the previous day. We see Brent, that's rose about 14 cents to $74.75 a barrel. The WTI, that's the U.S. grade, that's up 18 cents at $71.21 a barrel. Let's move quickly now to the Naira. Well, yeah, it's been bullish sentiment even in the parallel market and the official window. We're seeing again there for the NAFEX window, 1 Naira 86 kobo to fix at 1,503 Naira to the dollar. Analysts seeing a bullish trade right there in the FX market. A trading range between 1,505 Naira and 1,485 Naira. Just yesterday at the parallel market, we crossed the 1,600 psychological level. That's for the first time in a long time, and definitely that's some bullish sentiment there, even in the parallel market. To other stories now, the Central Bank of Nigeria has introduced new regulations allowing BDC operators to buy up to $25,000 per week from authorized dealer banks to address retail market demand for eligible invisible transactions. The guidelines detailed in a circular issued by the Trade and Exchange Department also include compliance measures aimed at promoting transparency and preventing potential misuse of foreign exchange. The new guidelines mandate that BDC operators must obtain their allocated foreign exchange from only one authorized dealer bank each week. This measure is designed to curb speculative practices and enhance regulatory oversight. BDCs found breaching this rule will face sanctions from the Central Bank of Nigeria. Additionally, authorized dealers are required to sell forex to BDCs at the current rate available in the Nigerian foreign exchange window. This ensures uniformity pricing across all the markets. So yeah, a lot to look out for in that market. To other stories now. Global technology giant IBM has been making clarifications on speculations of its exit from Nigeria and other major African countries. The company says that it will transition to an alternative operating model in select African countries. Under this new structure, it will no longer directly manage local sales and market operations, but will instead rely on MIBB, a subsidiary of the Midas Group, to oversee its business in 36 African countries. So you heard it from IBM there. They're not leaving, but they have a new model. Then it's still earnings season. The UAC, Nigeria PLC, released its unaudited financial statements for 2024, showing a revenue of 198 billion naira. That indicates a 64% rise from the previous year and 109% increase in profit to 25.8 billion naira. Gross profit more than doubled, reaching 46.3 billion, up from 21.3 billion naira in 2023, with gross margin expanding from 17.7% to 23.4%. Commenting on the results, Group Managing Director Folashope Aishimoju attributes the outcome to the hard work, skill, and dedication of leaders across the group and their teams. I will see the Minister of Budget and Economic Planning, Atiku Bagudu, says the additional figure of 4.5 trillion naira that has been added to the proposed 2025 appropriation bill was established by the committees of the National Assembly and the Economic Management team. The minister explains that the additional revenue will help support the diversification program of the federal government by putting more money in the solid minerals sector as well as infrastructure projects. Take a listen.
And the National Assembly and the Economic Management team continue to interface and interrogate all figures. And in that process, both the Senate Committee on Appropriations, Senate Committee on National Planning, Senate Committee on Finance established that we can generate more revenue by tasking all the institutions to do more. And the Federal Inland Revenue Service confirmed their ability to do more than what was submitted. Equally, the government-owned enterprises were, it was established that they can contribute more revenue, as well as the custom service. So revenue, additional revenue amounting to over 4.5 trillion was established, and this was taken to His Excellency Mr. President, because the beauty of the National Assembly Executive Corporation is that it's a harmonious relationship. So Mr. President was briefed on this additional revenue, and he consulted and he guided that this additional revenue should be used to further strengthen the Bank of Agriculture, Bank of Industry, support the diversification by putting more money in the solid mineral sector, as well as projects under the Renewed Hope Infrastructure Fund.
So there you have it. It's going to be a higher budget in 2025. And to help us break this all down, we have joining us right here in the studio, Mr. Bismarck Rouhani, CEO of Financial Derivatives Company. It's good to have you on the show, sir.
Good morning. It's good to be in the Central Business District of Nigeria.
Yes, we're right where the money, is changing hands and where the asset classes are moving from one buyer to the other.
Yeah.
But Mr. Rouhani, it's official now. the amount we saw before has increased.
So 54 trillion naira.
54 trillion naira. That's the new spending. I guess we should be rejoicing, champing out at this point.
Well, it's always better. Let me put it this way. It's better to, more is better than less when you're receiving.
Right.
Okay, so that's the way to look at it. Now, what it does mean is that there's a 2.5% increase in the amount going to be spent. And you heard the minister say solid minerals and capex. Good. Secondly, the sources of this revenue increase are from the Board of Customs and Excise, Federal Board of Inland Revenue, and one other agency. Good. But what we have to understand is that the price of oil in the budget is $75 a barrel. You just said it now that the price of Brent has gone down below 75, it's about 74 something. So what does this mean? It means that the economy and the government and the policymakers are in a reflationary mode, and you're trying to reflate the economy, create jobs, and hopefully improve the welfare of the people. That is what this is all about. And it's interesting because what would have happened normally, there would be a supplementary budget because we have more money, right? Or you use the increased revenues to actually reduce the deficit. What has happened? The deficit is still the same. The revenues have increased. The activities that are going to be, where the expenditure is going to targeted expenditure, solid minerals and capex. Usually capex has a multiplier effect. Recurrent expenditure has probably a leakage effect. So it's not a bad deal. And you have to understand something. In the budget itself, the president has said the assumed exchange rate is 1,500. We are now officially at about the same level. So in reality, we are moving more towards equilibrium. The real challenge is how do you translate this reflation into improved welfare of the people? How does it become lower prices? How does it become higher income? And how does it translate itself into...
But do we have to be worried about stoking inflation further?
Well, the inflation figure which we have as of now is still roughly about 34% plus. And the inflation numbers officially should be coming out on the 15th of February, a day after Valentine's Day.
Right.
Right? So we are hoping that there'll be a dirty February, all right? So
dirty February. Yes. Wow, that's another one.
Yes.
That's another one we need to look out for.
But what we think is that inflation has begun to moderate. If you look at the prices of goods, generally speaking, apart from pepper, every other thing has actually come down. We've seen milk down, we've seen eggs down, we've seen bread down, we've seen flour down, we've seen rice down. And therefore, in terms of nominal prices, but compared to this time last year, it's still higher. So you might see headline inflation slow down a little bit, but monthly inflation and food inflation will drop significantly. When I say significantly, a couple of points. Now, what does this mean? Why are prices beginning to decline at this time? 3 reasons. 1, there's consumer resistance. 2, we are seeing that people are switching, right? And 3, they have spent all their money in the dirty December.
Right.
And they are broke in January. And people are now preparing to go for the lesser Hajj, which is coming up at the end of this month. So all of these things combined mean that there's less money in the pocket. Prices are sticky, but even though they are reducing, but people they are not interested in buying much. So and also we've seen consumer sensitivity, where the price of petrol at MRS is $9.70. The price of petrol at Mobil is 10 naira more, which is $9.80. But if you go to Mobil, there's no queue. If you go to MRS, there's a long queue. 10 naira goes a long way when things are hard, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a hard quarter. This quarter is interesting in the sense that you have the fasting starting on the early March, and we have Easter on the 21st of April. So, and that's in the second quarter. We also have the MPC meeting on the 17th and 18th of this month. So all of these things put together mean that there are some policy issues and signals that we as investors, we as financial intermediaries, we as analysts have to take into consideration as we go along. But it's interesting days are here.
Yeah, definitely going to be an interesting first quarter in 2025. Absolutely. But, with all we're seeing, so far, especially in the FX market, and breaching that 1,600 psychological level at the parallel market, good sign.
No, but these are technical, because you increase the amount going to the BDCs. The fundamentals still point to the fact that, yes, the Naira is almost 27% undervalued because it's at, by PPP, it should be about 1,150 Naira or 1,170 Naira per dollar. Typically, frontier currency, the illicit premium is about 25%. So if you take 25% of 1,100, you're talking about 1,350 to 1,400. That's where it should be, right? But where it should be and where it is, there's a distance of almost 1,150 Naira. So some other thing you have to look at, the pound sterling itself has virtually crashed against the dollar. The dollar has increased in value against a basket of currencies. So I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that we should start getting excited. We still believe that the Naira would trade in the parallel market between 1550 and 1620. We also noticed that the airline IATA rate of exchange is now at 14.95. That's very important because the January is the beginning of the low, what they call the low season. So airline tickets begin to drop, and IATA backlog, we are told, have been cleared, and therefore the airlines are not knocking us over. But we've seen some interesting developments. One, Emirates are back here, and we are seeing 75 to 80% load factor in the Lagos-Dubai route. We've seen Qatar Airways offering some discounts in the transatlantic routes. We have seen also that Delta put in an extra flight between Lagos and New York. So you have a daily frequency Lagos to Atlanta, and you have now daily frequency Lagos to New York, which I think will stop when the winter low season kicks in. So all of these indications are that business activities begin to pick up, prices are beginning to slow, government is trying to reflate the economy, right? But again, this is a great opportunity because of the Trump effect, right, to build into resilience and begin to work hard. So I think the economy is creeping out of its current slow mode. The hope is that we go from a vicious cycle of poverty into a virtuous cycle of near prosperity.
Near prosperity.
I don't want to get ahead of myself. I call it near prosperity.
Near prosperity. All right, a great one. But definitely, I'm still wondering what's going to play out. When those high demand seasons come for FX. Do we see that kind of season in the first quarter?
Well, let me put it this way: the gross external reserves have dropped below you talked about the psychological resistance of 1,600.
Right.
We also have the psychological resistance of $40 billion.
Right, $40 billion.
If I've depleted my reserve, but about $1 billion in the last 2 weeks, it means I'm supporting the currency. If I'm supporting the currency for technical reasons, right, and market sanitization purposes, then what happens after that, right? But to be honest with you, Central Bank has done a good job in terms of focusing on its core mandate, which is the mandate of price stability. I think we've seen that happen, but I don't want us to get carried away and excited because there's a lot more work to be done. And quite frankly, we should be looking out for the inflation data that comes out and the GDP data, and also the outcome of the reconstitution of the basket.
And all these will be rebased data that we're looking out for.
No, let's put it this way. The data will come out and the methodology will be made clear.
Right.
I don't think that the Nigerian government is in a hurry to release data that people will question the integrity of the data. Because what happened with the unemployment numbers was that we saw unemployment technically come down from 33% to 4%, which was not credible. And ever since then, nobody has made any reference to those data points. So I think we have to be careful. We don't want to be seen to be playing with mirrors, all right? And the rebasing gives you an opportunity to do certain things. But again, we must separate or differentiate between the cosmetics, right, and the reality. We are in a world where there's too much cosmetic surgery already in the real life.
Right.
Now we want to take that to cosmetic economics. So we need to discount that, right? So after the face mask, we want to see what's behind, what the real face looks like.
And we'll definitely be looking forward to seeing that face. Thank you so much. Great having you.
It's a pleasure.
At your perspective today, Mr. Bismarck Wani, MD of Financial Derivatives Company.
The pleasure is mine. Thank you.
All right, we'll take a break now. When we come back, we get some investment outlook. That's next. Do stay with us. This is Business Morning. And it's still early days in 2025, but the trading year is moving on quite fast at this point. And investors, savvy investors, be wondering where they're going to be stashing cash into, in 2025. Some might be sitting on the sidelines, watching things, play out. But we always need to make that investment decision. But to help us unpack what to expect in 2025, we have Mr. Olatunde Amolegbe, the MD, Arthur Stephen Asset Management Company Limited. Join me right here in the studio. It's great to have you, sir. Happy New Year.
Thank you for having me, Ladi. Happy New Year.
So, it's a year, like I remember the previous years, when they started, investors were wondering, what's going to play out next? What is that investment class that I should be looking out so I don't miss out, on some of the profit, coming up? But talk to me about economic policies that will shape the investment landscape in Nigeria in 2025.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, in 2025 is always going to be all about inflation.
Right.
What are we doing to continue to curb inflation? Because there's no analyst that will argue that 34% inflation rate is acceptable. So the things we're doing to ensure that we try to bring that down will be crucial to any investment that anybody is making for 2025. So how do you ensure that those factors that are contributing to inflation are curbed? Issues such as FX market instabilities and the likes, issues around energy costs, issues around inadequate infrastructure, issues around insecurity. How do you ensure that you put in place policies that controls all of that and gradually starts to bring down your inflation? If your inflation starts dropping, then various sectors that are impacted by these inflations can start, easing a sigh of relief. So sectors such as the industrials, such sectors such as consumer goods sector, that have been heavily hit by issues around FX devaluation, issues around high interest rates, can start easing a sigh of relief, and we can start seeing growth, across sector. What has happened 2024 is that if you look at, yes, our GDP did rise 3.4% thereabout. It's projected to go up to about 3.5% for 2025. But what we saw was an uneven growth across sectors. So you saw sectors such as the oil and gas sector growing. You saw such sectors such as the finance sector growing, particularly in 2024. But the industrials, the consumer goods, those suffered significantly in 2024. But if you continue with policies that stabilize the FX market, for instance, and possibly start to bring down the exchange rate a little bit, if we are able to continue in that trajectory in bringing down energy costs, so the pump price starts to come down, and hopefully that impacts transportation too, then the transport cost comes down. Insecurity, we get a handle on that so that farmers can go back to the market and produce food. Food inflation starts to come down. Then those kind of sectors can also benefit. Then we can now see an a relatively even growth across sectors in the economy, and then the kind of
with the picture you painted, it seems like you're just working with a console and you have the volumes for each of these macroeconomic indicators, and you just pull down inflation, pull down the exchange rate.
Yes.
It would be great if it was that straightforward, but we've been seeing action from the Central Bank of Nigeria. How are you seeing some of the moves so far from CBN?
I've said it in the past. The CBN's business isn't to be allocating resources. The CBN's business isn't to be choosing winners and losers within an economy. The primary focus or the primary duty of the CBN is to stabilize prices in a market economy. All right, so I guess we are a little bit lucky now that we have the management at the CBN returning to that focus of price stability, because we're in a market economy. We are supposed to give even chance for all the players in the economy an opportunity to thrive. But when you now have a situation where the CBN took on the role of allocating resources, selecting which industry or which sector they are going to bail out, or which sector they are going to stimulate, that is not right. But now we are back to the traditional role of the CBN, which is price stability. So they are putting in place measures that stabilize the FX market, that ensures that every player in the market has a fair shot of succeeding. Then we're going to see growth. And the truth of the matter is that some of the challenges we're having now did not start overnight. Some of the policies they are putting in place are not going to solve the problem overnight either. So we're going to have to give them time and give them a chance to work themselves through the system and actually start to make a positive impact. So we are not going to expect the exchange rate to just drop overnight. It's going to happen. In fact, what we're going to see is a situation where we're going to achieve stability first, before we can now start seeing maybe a strengthening of the Naira. Energy prices is going to also become stable before we can see a reduction. All of that, along with some other fiscal issues, will ultimately start impacting inflation. And if inflation starts to drop, then we should see a positive impact on the economy, and more importantly, positive impact on the lives of the citizens.
And with all of these headwinds were with us in 2023, 2024, but it seems investors were still better off. At the end of the day, even though the macroeconomic headwinds were quite negative, investors still cashed out. And would they get more this time, seeing that most of these indicators actually go in the right direction? On what sectors will profit in 2025?
If you look at if you harken back to 2024, as I'd mentioned, because of the uneven growth even in the market, you will see that the gains, though if you look at the chart, virtually all the sectors in the market recorded gains last year. But if you look at it, the gains were uneven. So, for instance, the oil and gas sector, was topped the market in terms of, price movements, followed by the finance sector. The expectation is that with some of this, the positive effects from some of these policies, then we're going to see more sectors start to join in that, positive movement. So, for instance, the insurance sector, for instance, should be able to benefit in 2025. I've mentioned consumer goods sector. They've really taken a hit from FX issues, interest rates issues. By the time we start seeing stability in those fundamentals, then the consumer goods companies should also start doing well in 2025, hopefully. And of course, the industrials, like the Dangote cements of this world and all of that, should also benefit from those positive.
Because with some of the results we saw before, the FX losses were huge.
Absolutely.
So at some point, they might start to come down, and maybe no more FX losses.
So let me give you some typical example. If you look at the top gainers and the top losers in the chart for 2024, you will see companies such as MTN, such as big companies, huge companies, crucial companies to the economy, such as MTN, such as Nestle, all right, in the losers column. That typically shouldn't be the case. But of course, the issues of huge FX revaluation losses and huge finance costs, affected those companies. If you get a handle on some of those issues, then you could see those sort of bellwether companies starting to show their real value.
We've seen MTN already moving in that direction, somewhat, at this time.
Absolutely, with the adjustment in tariffs, that coupled with the stabilization in terms of the general finance cost, should see them doing much better in 2025.
Right.
Maybe not necessarily reaching their full potential this year, but we should see them doing much.
All right, we're already seeing action, happening, even in the global space, with the tariff wars at this time. I'm sure investors are just watching and waiting to see where they will strike at this point. But so much, I'm looking forward to it. I guess it's going to be a very interesting one.
Absolutely.
So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts with us, Mr. Olatunde Amolegbe, MD of Arthur Stevens Asset Management, joining us right here at the trading floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, lady.
All right, so that's it from me on Business Morning. I'm going to have things over to the Sunrise Daily team. We'll be back at 1 p.m. to give you updates on what's playing out with most of the markets we track. Bye-bye.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily, and we have more conversation going on right now. Of course, it's Thursday. So much has happened in the past 24 hours, and joining us to unpack, in fact, one of them was this ICPC speaking on the recovered 20 billion Naira ghost workers pension deduction. The former NHIS boss was remanded, and that made all of us worry about what's happening to our government officials and the monies they're put in their care. And then, of course, this unfortunate fire incident in Zamfara State that's got 17 children killed in that Almajiri school. Well, joining us this Thursday, Mr. Laolu Akande, former presidential media aide and host of Inside Sources. Thank you so much for being with us on the program.
Thank you. Good morning, Kira. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. Let's start off with Zamfara. Another fire, not fuel tanker this time, but an inferno in that Almajiri school, and 17 children dead.
Yeah, well, so sad, and just reminds us that our public safety system is still very below par.
Especially when it comes to schools, isn't it?
Yeah, some of these things are very preventable. You'll be surprised that, and it's part of the problem that we talk about when we say that the local government administrations are basically emasculated. There are no basic firefighting equipment, ordinary, those big, what do they call it? Yeah, the fire extinguishers, you don't find it anywhere. Some of these fires, like the one in Zamfara State, could have been, taken care of if somebody saw it.
What got me thinking about, Laolu, is there used to be handbooks when we were kids of what to do
in case of a fire.
What to do in case of an attack, even a terrorist attack, a robbery attack.
Right.
What things are you supposed to do? Do those things still exist?
I mean, that's the point. All of these
Especially
things.
for a school like this one.
It's just, and it's so sad. It's just a painful reminder of where we have gotten to. And, when some of us keep insisting that, look, we need to go back to the basics, we need people to speak out, it's because of things like this. And these are even very low reflections. There are even more damaging things, that we deal with. But, it's sad. And this has become often, especially this year, we've seen quite a number of preventable explosions, preventable fire incidents. The question is, how long more are we going to have to tolerate this kind of...
The president, of course, President Bola Tinubu, has sent his condolences. We can see that the governor of Zamfara State visibly distraught by this situation. One of the questions that also came to my mind, do they have fire drill? You know how, like in channels here, we do a rehearsal. Yeah. We're always rehearsing on what to do if there's a fire. I just wondered, an Alamajiri school like that, knowing how Alamajiri schools can be when it comes to do they do fire drills? Are there trainings and things like that?
You know, you will expect, you know, but if you look at the level of the extent of damage
you can tell
of the local governments, you know, the fact that they don't exist, as a matter of fact, even when you know, whatever it is that they have, they just share money, you know, normally into 3 places. This goes to the governor, and all kind of, you know, there are no attention paid anymore to such issues. Even the classrooms themselves, you know, students are lying, you know, barefooted, you know, on their bellies, sitting on the floor. The quality of teachers, the buildings are dilapidated. So it's just a rigmarole, an unending list of unfortunate circumstances, including this kind of preventable inferno.
Yeah, SCPC is speaking about this 20 billion ghost workers pension deduction.
Yeah, well, you know, so it's again. So we talk a lot about, you know, official graft. You know, that means people that are interested with public funds taking the money. But here you have a situation where, you know, regular people in this public service, you know, who have access to the payroll, do all kinds of play all kinds of tricks. These are regular Nigerians. You know, oftentimes, you know, when I see this
endemic. What can be done about this? While we're looking, okay, we saw the former NHIS boss, you know, with that embarrassing story and being remanded even afterwards.
Right.
You know, but it got me thinking. Is there a way to make sure that our public service, from top to bottom?
I think part of the problem, like in the case of the NHIS former boss, Professor Usman, I think, you know, it is sad that people will say that, oh, it is because he's being critical. He has a right to be critical of government. It is his fundamental human right.
Oh, yeah, we saw people from Katsina State saying, look,
but does that right extend to the fact that he shouldn't answer questions regarding his conduct when he was NHIS boss? You know, and this is the problem that we have to deal with. So if it's coming from my ethnic group, you know, I'm going to defend the guy regardless of the facts of the matter. You know, and then if it's not my ethnic group, then it doesn't matter. And these are the kinds of games that the elites play. Professor Usman, the former NHIS boss, should just go and answer the charges. Let them give him a fair trial. That is the only thing that we should be asking. We shouldn't be questioning the fact that, don't make the connection. It doesn't matter. You know, there are no limitations, statute limitations to say that, okay, if you stole 10 years ago, you know, 10 years after, nobody can go after you. They can come after you anytime. Because, you know, this is a public trust that you have allegedly abused. And we should stop all these kinds of rhetoric to say that, it's because he's attacking the president, or it's because he's speaking out. He can speak out all he wants, but he should also answer the question. We shouldn't weaken the fight against corruption. This is one of the things that I have been saying, that Mr. President himself has to become much more proactive. He has to be much more deliberate. You can't just fight corruption by some of the policies. You know, you have to fight corruption frontally, because it's so corrosive, it's so endemic. If we don't kill corruption, like President Buhari said, he's right on that. Corruption will kill us. And this is what we see all the time.
Speaking of Mr. President, France, for a personal visit.
Yeah.
Before the AU event in Addis Ababa. Right. Another visit to France.
Clearly, Mr. President loves Paris. I remember they say, see Paris and die. You know.
But, you know, the ripple effects of that. Remember the last time, it did cause a bit of a ruckus in West Africa. I mean, should he have gone to Paris at this point? I'm sure there'll be reasons. I know how the presidency works. There'll be reasons why that visit is expedient. But, you know, on that matter, though.
Yeah. The thing is that, you know, to be very honest with you, Kela, we have become desensitized, really. You know, it didn't start with President Tinubu. It started, you know, probably I don't recall what happened during Jonathan. I wasn't in the country then. But even, you know, during President Buhari, there were all kinds of trips. They say, oh, where is he on vacation? Is he not on vacation? You know, and so President Tinubu comes in and continues the practice. Yes, you know, and people are becoming desensitive. We are losing our sensitivity to some of those things, and we just hope for the best. You know, I think
maybe the conversation about the three countries that have left ECOWAS might come up in that meeting with President Macron.
Well, I'm sure that it should have been discussed even much earlier. Yeah. You know, but I think that to those who say that why is Nigeria getting close to France, you know, because of what happened in those three countries, I say, you know, that's nonsense. Nigeria is a big country. You know, we have the capacity to have a reasonable relationship with any other country in this world if we put our hands together. There's no such country where Nigeria can't go head to head diplomatically. We have the people, we have the intellect, and we have the can-do spirit. Yeah. So I don't think that you know, Nigeria shouldn't get close to France because of the problems with the three countries. I mean, if the people of France think that they can take advantage of Nigeria, good luck to them.
Speaking of Mr. President, an increase in the 2025 budget.
I love that because I believe that we're not spending enough, really. You know, if you look at the population that we are dealing with, over 200 million people, and then we are spending, you know, 20 trillion, now 40, you know, and now it's up to 54.
I mean, these are not the issues. I think that what the problem is when we hear, so he has explained the money came in from the FIRS, from customs and other agencies, increase this budget. And of course, we've heard economists talk about the fact that, look, it may look like a massive budget, but in terms of spending power compared to last year, it's actually lesser than last year. However, when it comes to the person on the ground and feeling that the budget has been applied to make my life better, that's where the question is.
Yeah, so
because it doesn't feel that way. And then it also brings up the question of government spending.
Right. Well, you know, what I want to lead with is the fact that we have to spend a lot more. We have to spend a lot more, you know, to be able to reflect the economy, to be able to even make a dent on some of the issues that we are dealing with. You know, I mean, look at all the kinds of gaps that we have, infrastructural gaps, you know, human capital development, you know, the rot that is in that space, you know, in education, in health, you know, they are just too much. Now, I'm not saying that the public budget should take care of everything, but we must find a way in which the public budget is not diminishing in real terms, because it is diminishing in real terms when you look at the devaluation of the Naira and stuff like that. So we must find ways to get around that. Otherwise, we'll just be going round and round in circles. Your point is right, that, you know, maybe at the end of the day, it's not even trickling down as it ought to be. And that's a different conversation as to efficiency, as to corruption, you know, which is also a big deal.
As to disbursement, because budgeting and disbursement are not the same thing.
They're not the same thing, you know. Although I think we are doing better in terms of, you know, making those funds available, you know, if compared to years before, you know, I think budget performance is beginning to inch, you know, a little better. But of course, you know, we have to find ways to spend more money. If you compare our budget to the budget of New York State, I can bet that New York State is spending more money than the entire Federation of Nigeria. You know, I mean, that just tells you it just gives you a picture that we still have a long way to go. But you're right. Government has to cut its expenses. You know, we have to reduce the ostentation by government officials, and we have to deal with corruption. But we must spend more money so that we can transform this country.
I'm going to toss it to Ayo in a bit, but before I toss it to Ayo, Ude Okoye, National Secretary of the People's Democratic Party. We had the conversation when he ran out of that hall.
Yeah.
And now, Mr. Turaki SAN, of course, said he with that committee that was set up, said, we're going to look at all the papers that you have from the courts. And ultimately, the Board of Trustees of the PDP has picked Ude Okoye as a National Secretary of the People's Democratic Party. Opposition, maybe.
Yeah. Well, you know, the point is that, look, the PDP has failed the Nigerian people by not giving us an opposition of any kind at all.
They've settled one problem.
Maybe
they're on the way.
And this problem started. This problem started when Alhaji Atiku Abubakar chose to go against the grain of a national consensus regarding rotational president.
We had his daughter here yesterday on the program, and one of the things that Hawa Atiku raised, and one of the things that she said was, listen, while we keep talking about rotational presidency and whatnot, what about competence? And it really got me thinking. If we had an agreement that there should be rotational presidency, we can evolve past an agreement, can't we, and start to focus on the competency of who's going to lead, as opposed to some unspoken deal we had where we rotate between North and South.
No, I don't think our national consensus around rotational presidency is at the exclusion of competence. No. It's that Nigeria is such a big country. We are so multi-dimensional in terms of our ethnicity, regionalism, and religion, and all kinds of things. And we said, look, just so everybody gets a sense of belonging, let's do this thing turn by turn, because we've had a past where you have much more people in the north. I think 65% of the time of presidency in this country has gone to the north. And so it's reasonable to say that, okay, going forward from 1999, let us rotate. And so Atiku Abubakar, who should know better, a consuming politician, very brilliant human being who can bring people together. He failed this country, and he failed his own reputation when he decided to go against the grain.
Will he be doing worse if he comes out in 2020?
Absolutely. And that is why PDP is in trouble. It's important to say it. That's the reason why PDP is in trouble. That's why the chairmanship of the party, moved away from where it ought to be. And that leads to every other thing. So there's no point talking about the fallout. What is the root cause? The root cause of the problem of PDP is because the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar decided to go against a national consensus rotational presidency, 8 years of the North, 8 years of the South.
Ayo.
Well, I'm in Lagos, so I'm going to stick with Lagos matters for a start. But Mr. Akande, you are not unaware of what's happening in the APC, beg your pardon, in Lagos, concerning the speakership. The Speaker of the State House of Assembly has been embroiled in some kind of issues. And it's still, I don't even know whether to say it is certain or uncertain. Who is the Speaker of the State House of Assembly? On the one hand, of course, some people are saying, look, the status quo that we have now, where the Honorable Miranda is the Speaker, should be sustained. And there are those who are saying, look, it's not over yet, because Mudashiru Obasa, Honorable Mudashiru Obasa, is still in contention one way or the other. But then, what is the Governor's Advisory Council saying is another thing. So what's your take in all of these? Or is it just all politics?
Yeah, well, it's a lot of politics, Ayo, and I can report that the situation in Lagos regarding the Lagos State House of Assembly has even become more worrisome. I'm aware that the president is not happy about what it is that has happened in Lagos. The president wants to sustain what he argues to be where we're talking about rotational presidency. So I'm told that the president doesn't like the fact that the governor, and the speaker in Lagos come from the same zone. So we've had arguments and narratives that Obasa is a loyalist of the president. He has seen the president since his return. The president is not happy that they removed him and all of that. But the current issue on the ground now is that the president has put his feet down and say that, look, you can't have the governor of Lagos come from Lagos Central and also have the speaker in Lagos come from Lagos Central. So I suspect that something is going to have to give, because, whether Obasa is a loyalist or is not a loyalist, that seems to be a strong argument if you are saying that, look, this thing has to be shared. The governor is from Lagos Central. The new speaker is from Lagos Central. Maybe Obasa won't get back, but that may be a very strong indication of what might happen. The thing about Lagos politics that we must concede is that Lagos is one of the few states in this country where we have seen a reasonable evolution of a democratic development, besides the fact that the president himself is the godfather, which you can't really take away. Besides that fact, you have a state assembly that is fairly independent of who the governor is after Asiwaju. So you have a strong speaker or Obasa right there, and then you have a very, I would even say performing governor as Sanwo-Olu, and they can balance out each other. We have to give Lagos that credit. So what has happened now is that the members of the Lagos State House of Assembly, they have further attempting to assert their independence, even beyond the reaches of the godfather, that's the president. Okay? And the president, being a Democrat himself, he understands that game, that look, this is where these people are going. But now he seems to have brought out the trump card and say, okay, if you guys are going to remove Obasa, then we can have a situation where both the governor and the speaker comes from the same Lagos Central. We're going to see how that turns out, Ayo.
It's interesting that we put it that way, because on the one hand, the president is looking at, if the president is indeed looking at it that way, on the one hand, the president is looking at the political balance. On the other hand, the Lagos State House of Assembly members are looking at their independence. So one has to give, right? Particularly in the name, and both of them have the consequences of posterity. Yeah, I mean, that's why I said that the crisis in Lagos has taken a new turn. Look, I mean, we have it on good authority that after Obasa came back to the country, he has met with the president, okay? And the GAC clearly has also been persuaded by the fact that, look, the members of the State Assembly are very decisive about this thing. It's not likely that they are going back. And we are told that the president don't like the idea that when you guys have removed this guy, he is alleging that it is not done properly, that it's not natural justice because he didn't get an opportunity to defend himself. But now, you guys have even gone to replace him, and the replacement that you have given him is against what we all have agreed, that we will split the governorship and the speakership in two different zones. So I mean, that seems to me a winning argument. Well, I guess, as you said, we'll wait to see how it goes, at the end of the day. But there's this other issue that's also, making the rounds. Of course, you are not unaware of the position of the United States of America about funding for some aids to Nigeria and a number of other countries of the world. What's interesting in this whole conversation for me, Mr. Akande, is, okay, this is like a wake-up call. Do you think we can really rouse from this sleep, or we're still too drowsy to see the consequences, particularly in the near of our future?
Okay, two quick things, Hayo. I think that we should commend the federal government, especially the initiative of Professor Ali Patel, to quickly come up with a budgetary provision to handle some of the implications, namely some of the HIV treatment and stuff like that. About over 4 billion quickly provided to fill that gap. We should commend that. The second thing is that, look, a lot of the other aspects or a significant aspect of the USAID funding, people normally challenge the disbursement. Anyway, it's like, those disbursements just disappear somewhere in the tunnel, in the pipeline before it reaches the end of the road where it's meant to be. So my point is that a few, experts, may suffer, they may lose their consultancy, but I don't see a devastating impact on the common man, beyond the issue of HIV, which the federal government has responded to. But the third point, quickly, on what is happening is that the whole world is going to have to tolerate this kind of behavior from the United States of America, and hopefully 4 years after, we can all try to recover from it, because a lot more is on the way, as you can guess.
When you said a lot more is on the way, so my heart skipped in. Because how will we handle it? We collect a lot of funding, Laolu.
Oh, well, look, that one is even very... Look, what about the people of Gaza, the Palestine? The US president said, you guys get out of your place. Get out of the place. America wants to take over. Of course, it's not going to happen, but the very idea, it must tell you how audacious, the president is, and how clueless he is to say some of these things that are completely outrageous. Look, let's just, hook on our seat belts. It's going to be very bumpy for these next 4 years.
But it's an opportunity.
It is an opportunity indeed for us to get our act together.
As a challenge, it's an opportunity for you to get your act together.
I agree with you, Kela.
I want to thank you very much, Mr. Laolu Akande, for being with us on the program.
Thank you so much.
And looking forward to Inside Sources.
Tomorrow, by the grace of God.
There you go. Laolu Akande, former presidential media aide, speaking on a lot of national issues. We have a few messages here. Okay, I'm going to take Pastor Law Alpha C. It says Nigeria is tilting towards a one-party state with a spate of irreconcilable leadership squabbles in almost all the political parties that made a significant impact in 2023 general elections. This is a direct attack on democracy and good governance. Ayo?
Well, I think it's just a wonderful place for me to say thank you for the privilege of being a part of your morning. And there are a number of other messages here and there that we can look at, but you just have to go to Sunrise Daily Now on X. Thank you, and have a beautiful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Thank you all very much for tuning in. I'm Kayla Magwa. Have a great day.